A couple more things here. So, I am part of the most selfish generation in history, and we should be ashamed of our legacy. We are going to be 25% worse off than our parents' generation. We're the first generation that's going to have a lower lifespan than our parents in Canada. We are a generation that is being screwed. And it's a pyramid scheme. Capitalism is a pyramid scheme, and we're entering it at the end. So what happens in a pyramid scheme? Right? People buy in, they get more people to buy in. It's always built on new people entering it from the bottom. We started from the bottom, and we're always going to stay here. Right? I'm gonna take that Drake line right there. We're always going to stay here unless we flatten the pyramid. There is no room for this capitalist system to continue expanding. We're seeing crisis after crisis after crisis, and this ladder here that we're trying to climb by graduating is blocked. There's no jobs. There's only room for so many people at the top. They have to keep us at the bottom. So I'm just going to have a couple memes here about the baby boomer generation. So they voted in successive governments who have served their interests, cutting taxes, cutting programs, and it's playing out now for us and our generation. Right, this goes back to the unpaid internships. Nothing in life is free. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Go get a job. Go, pay for your education. Take out loans. Just do what you got to do to get ahead. I mean, they're going to try and pay you an experience. I told I wasn't allowed to swear, but it was already on the screen. So. I mean, they are the cause. They are the cause of the global economic crisis. And, they want to know why we don't have a job. Yeah, we can stop for questions if you want.
No, never mind. Keep going. I've got a point on that, though.
Please, make your point.
Speaking from experience and a lot of struggles that not only my generation, but my minority status has, I am fucked in general. And it seems like a generation older than us are trying to work against that, but they can't fight. And I don't know why the generation before mine would work so hard against that and see nothing.
Okay, maybe we could talk about that more at the end there. Anyways, so there's a general contempt for other generations in the baby boomer generation, including the generations that came before them. I mean, we have politicians in power in Canada now that are cutting services and benefits to veterans, to people who, risked it all to supposedly keep us safe, but that's another debate. But still, these are veterans who have services, who should have support from their government. The federal government says it has no social contract to care for military veterans. Just like that. Okay, so that's the economic side of things. Before I even get into the environmental side of things, I actually want to just quickly touch on the social side of things because that was brought up earlier. So, the social terms of our generational crisis. We are the most surveilled generation ever. Everything we say and do is being documented for future use against us. I mean, no other generation has had to put up with this Orwellian control of their lives. No generation has come even close to having to deal with what we're dealing with. And not only are we the most surveilled generation, we do it to ourselves through social media, through these other things as well. But we do have booming industries of surveillance. We have a $1.2 billion spy palace being built for Canada's version of the NSA, CSEC, in Ottawa, the most expensive public building built in decades, if not forever, and it's for spying on you, This is where the priorities are of our government. Okay, so we have prison expansions. We actually have lower crime rates in Canada, and we've had successive lower crime rates year by year for several decades now. And at the same time, we have more prison units than we've ever had. We're putting more and more people into prisons. We have a tough on crime agenda. The government talks about unreported crime and this epidemic of crime that's happening that we can't quantify because no one's reporting it. we are being policed. We are being controlled. More of our resources are going into policing. I know there's a battle in London now around policing costs. In Toronto, 50% of the city's budget goes to police. Nearly half of police are on the sunshine list. You know, public employees that make over $100,000 a year. So we have over-policing of our generation specifically. We're targeted specifically as a generation. I mean, there's racial profiling, of course. There is definitely a lot of abuse towards Indigenous people by the policing system. But as a generation, it's not talked about. We are actually very highly targeted by the policing industries. So this is part of the social problem of policing, and also militarization of policing. General Dynamics, based in London, has donated an armored personnel carrier to the London Police Department. So we are seeing this all over the world, actually, where police departments are turning into militaries. They are getting military equipment. They are training with militaries. They're policing the population more and more in terms of an occupation force. Okay, vanishing social services. We all know that. We've all experienced that. I don't even need to go into that. I mean, I should probably start moving along because we have a lot to get through. So I'm going to skip the rest of the social side of things, except the rights and freedoms being taken away. We saw that at G20. We saw that in Montreal. Now you can't even have a protest in Montreal. You're not allowed to protest at all. You have a protest, they surround you immediately and give everyone a ticket for like $600 as a public ordinance violation. It's obscene what's been allowed to happen. In the late 90s, it was the late 90s I think, when APEC happened in Vancouver.
1997.
1997, yeah, late 90s. There was this huge thing about, oh my God, the police used pepper spray on the protesters. There was national outcry. It was all on the news, like this major event that the police had used pepper spray on protesters. It even got to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister had to make a comment. He's like, haha, I put it on my plate, pepper. I don't know if you remember this. Fast forward a couple decades, pepper spray being used on protesters is not news. It's not even news, let alone there's an outcry. There's no news about it. It's just accepted as part of the norm. In fact, it's considered too light. You have water cannons. You have sound weapons. You have all kinds of other control mechanisms that they've developed since then. So these are the rights and freedoms being taken away. Your right to protest against the ongoing erosion of your future is being closed by policing and other mechanisms to keep you in line. Okay, so I'm going to get to the environmental side of things, because actually that's the most depressing of all. Utter collapse of human civilization will be difficult to avoid, says NASA. So this isn't, an environmental group saying this, trying to get people, to push people into action. This is scientists. These are people using, put all the information available to look at trends, to look at what's going on in the world, and look at, what humans are doing around the world, and being like, we're kind of screwed. If we continue the way we're continuing, we're totally screwed. So what are we doing? Well, it's business as usual for the vast majority of the world's nations, because there's a certain class of people who control those nations. And they're very much invested in business as usual, because this study says, if you want to read through it, you should read through it, but it says that mass economic balancing needs to happen. It says people need to stop having kids. It says all kinds of things. Drastic measures need to be taken to avoid full-on collapse. And, people are living good. There's a lot of rich people in Western nations that are living really good, and they don't want to actually have wealth redistribution. They don't want to actually create a sustainable future. They want profits, and they're invested in companies that are causing these problems. So it's basically revolution or extinction. That is actually the options that are left to us. Okay, we're already living in a mass extinction. I don't know if you've noticed it around you, but species are disappearing all around us. 80% of the world's rivers are biologically dead. We've lost over 120 species in the last 8 years. 8 years alone. Just in the last 8 years, 120 species gone forever. Bees, colony collapse. I know you've probably heard a little bit of the threat to bees right now, with colonies collapsing all over the world due to GMOs and pesticides and all kinds of other reasons. The monarch butterflies, I don't know if you've noticed them recently. They are very, very rapidly declining in numbers. And also frogs, amphibians, indicator species, species that let you know if they're there, the ecosystem's relatively doing all right. I haven't seen a frog since I was like a kid in an urban area, right? Like it's a couple years and they die out when it comes to the pollution that's happening in our population centers. So we have a serious problem with mass extinction happening right now. If we don't address it, it's going to continue. Oceans, overfished. I mean, there's a saying, there's a lot of fish in the sea. There isn't. They're being dragged from the bottom. The bottom is being scraped to death. The last fish are being caught right now as we speak. Not only fish, but we have plastic islands in the ocean the size of Texas, or even bigger than Texas, I think now. We have all kinds of pollution, all kinds of illegal whaling and hunting and things happening in the oceans, destruction. There's mining happening, offshore mining. There's all kinds of offshore drilling and disasters we saw in New Orleans. I mean, in the whole Gulf of Mexico being destroyed by the BP. There's major threats to the oceans, and the oceans are really crucial for our survival. They are a major part of the food chain for the world. We have mining. I don't know if you know, but Canada is the world's capital for mining. Most mining companies in the world are based here. They're based here because the Canadian government will let them get away with anything they want around the world. Even the US has more regulations on what they can do outside of their jurisdiction as companies based in the US. Canada really actually lets these companies get away with murder on a daily basis. There's companies moving in, displacing villages, killing people who are resisting them, polluting the waters, just absolutely destroying ecosystems, dumping their toxins right into river systems, just operating with complete impunity because they can. They have the power to do it, and Canada refuses to do anything about it. And one thing I'm going to bring up real quickly on mining before I move on is most mining exploration and most mining conflicts are on gold mines. So here's gold, something we absolutely don't need for anything at all. 80% of the world's gold, 90% of the world's gold, I think, is only used in investment and jewelry, not in scientific applications or technological applications. This is actually a resource that we have way more than enough of. But what's driving it is this insecurity. People are like, oh, the future is crazy. The future is going to be really tough. We should start investing in things like gold that have like real value. Gold has no value. It just has value because you think it has value. And because you think it has value, people are going around the world just ravaging the earth, colonizing new places, and destroying further destroying the earth. It takes about 20 tons of toxic waste gets created for every ring, every gold ring. 20 tons of toxic waste. It's the most wasteful mining in the world. It's the most obscene thing that is happening on the planet because it is absolutely unnecessary and it's leading to such devastation. Oil sands, tar sands, I'm going to call them tar sands. Oil sands is ridiculous. It is tar. They turn it into oil by a process of a lot of water being polluted and a lot of energy being burnt up. It's completely unsustainable. This is scraping the bottom of the barrel, basically, is what's happening right now with peak oil. All of the easily accessed oil has been got. They're now looking at ways of turning tar into oil. They're looking at ways of fracking to get gas and also to get oil. They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel to continue this oil economy when we should be investing our resources into building something sustainable, something long term. This is very, very short-sighted. Oil we have all kinds of spills happening. I don't know if people have been paying attention to the news, but it's greater and greater frequency that there are spills happening. There's a pipeline that goes very, very close to London called Line 9. There's ongoing resistance to that. It's a 40-year-old pipeline. It has already leaked in multiple places, and they want to put tar sands through it. They want to increase the risks that it will spill in a major way. I should probably keep moving. They're expanding the tar sands. They want to expand it by 5 times, so that's why they're planning all these pipelines. So, like I said, they want to continue their profits. They want to continue to make money on doing what they know how to do. Even though there's all this evidence that if they do that, we're doomed. We're actually doomed. As a species, and definitely as like a human society, we are as a civilization. If we continue down this road, if we don't transition and don't start coming up with alternative ways of organizing ourselves and our economies, we're absolutely screwed. They still want to continue it. They're making lots of money. They're getting rich. Okay, nuclear. This is the stuff. This is what I use for nuclear. I mean, we have a lot of uranium that's mined in Canada. I mean, people might be aware of the massive nuclear disaster in Japan recently, but there's those risks everywhere. There's risks anywhere there's nuclear, and I mean, there's also no plan for the future. Like, how are we going to actually deal with the nuclear waste that we're producing right now? They're trying to find locations to put it. Every community is saying, hell no, you're not going to put that in our community. Nobody wants a nuclear dump in their backyard, right? Nobody wants a uranium mine on their land either. And most uranium mining is happening on native land. So this is not a solution. Fracking, I already talked about that. This is a picture of someone lighting their tap on fire because of their wells being contaminated by the fracturing of different layers beneath the earth, where gas gets into their water, really makes the water unsafe to drink, and you can even light it on fire. And that's why people are resisting, people are resisting very, very strongly against fracking out there. There's a fracking ban or moratorium in Quebec. There is potential plans for fracking all around Southern Ontario, and you're going to see a lot of resistance to that. Okay, peak oil is here. It's going to break economies. So we're trying to keep it going by doing the tar sands and these things, but this is unsustainable. We all know that that can't last. And even if it was possible to sustain the oil economy, we would still end up pushing us over the tipping point to where this planet becomes uninhabitable. Most people in the world are going to have a hard time getting access to water. Water, basic necessity. Something that's being polluted every day by these mining companies, by these oil companies. In 2 decades or so, we're going to have mass shortages throughout the world. Okay, things are really bad. War, heat waves, starvation, climate change. And what is our response? Sprawl. Continue to build infrastructure that has no future. These communities that are just put up overnight, where people don't even really know each other, totally based on, housing booms and speculation and profits for construction industries. This is absolutely insanity. Okay, so our generation. I just hit you with a whole bunch of bad news, but there's good news. I mean, our generation around the world is rising up, is leading the charge for revolution in every single continent, in every single country. There are youth movements that are gaining momentum, gaining strength. I know people obviously knew about Occupy and about the Arab Spring. I mean, the Arab Spring really was a youth movement to start. The revolutionary youth movement really are the ones that kicked it off. People joined them. This also happened in Spain with the Indignados. This has happened across the world with the Occupy movement. The Occupy movement was, this is Bahrain youth. Occupy movement, restless youth. It's youth, it's us. We're the ones that are seeing what's happening, seeing what's going on, seeing what our future prospects look like, seeing the future as this really precarious place, this really unstable place, this really destroyed and ravaged place, and wanting to change that now. And so we're rising up, we're fighting back, which is good. So in Chile, student protesters have been going on strikes, shutting down cities. Mexican youth as well. And I don't know if people were paying attention back in 2010, but there was massive rallies in the UK against increasing costs of education that turned very confrontational, that were very combative in spirit, that stormed the Tory headquarters, fighting back. Oh, sorry, I already did that one. Indignados, I talked about them. They're actually the precursor to Occupy. And then obviously there was the Quebec student strike. So who here went to Quebec and participated in that? Anyone? Anyone go there to support it? Did anyone support it here? Anyone try and talk to people that being like, hey, these students are right. They should be fighting back. Okay, how about this? How many people here are like, what the hell? We're paying so much. Why are they like all mad? They don't pay even like half as much as us. Anyone? Anyone said that? A couple people maybe? Right, so that's like the crab in the bucket mentality, right? That's like someone is doing a little better than you, so you want to pull them down. And it's the idea that, it's a race to the bottom. So if you're not doing the worst, then you shouldn't complain. I mean, we should all be complaining. The fact that we haven't risen up as students in Ontario and across English-speaking Canada, I find like miraculous. Not miraculous in a good way, like absolutely in a horrible way that we haven't risen up in the way that students in Quebec have. The reason they have the cheapest tuition in the country is because they do that. They organize, they go on strike, they fight back, they disrupt the economy, they disrupt society, they disrupt the status quo and business as usual when they want to make their demands heard. They don't just hold a very peaceful and unobstructive rally. They actually go out and block roads, block entrances, block ports, shut down financial districts, walk out of schools, etc. And this is how you apply social power and social pressure to fight for your interests. So I think it's really important, and I think a lot of students across English-speaking Canada did eventually start getting on board. But I know that for most of us, that was our initial reaction. What are they complaining about? We got it worse here. But we're not. But why doesn't that translate into us doing something about that here? That's something that I really want to get into. I'm kind of running out of time. Okay. Anyways, so I'm supposed to talk about the People's Social Forum as well. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm helping to organize the largest gathering of youth, students, unions, environmental groups, indigenous peoples, grassroots activists, basically people of all stripes who want a better world. Coming together to Ottawa, we're expecting 10 to 15,000 people to start pushing back against all of these things that are happening that are leading us to a dead end in terms of the future. And so I'll get into that in a minute, but maybe before that, I do want to open it back up for people who haven't said anything yet. There's a lot of people who haven't said anything and have just been, taking it in. And I want to ask, like, what would it take for you to organize? What would it take for you to revolt? So, I would like to hear from one of you.
I just wouldn't want to end up in jail.
You don't want to end up in jail. I mean, I did go over that. We are being heavily policed. But I'll also speak to that. I mean, I've been to jail. I've been arrested many times. It's not as bad as you probably think it is. And you get used to it. And at the same time, just because you get arrested and go to jail doesn't mean you're ending up with a criminal record, right? I've been arrested a bunch of, no it doesn't. You had a police record, it's different than a criminal record.
But in their eyes, you were committing a crime
if you're not convicted, you don't have a criminal record.
If people were violent in the protests, that's considered a crime.
Sure, but if you're not convicted, you don't have a criminal record. If you get arrested, you might have a police record that you were arrested. Fine, yes. But most charges that happen out of protest situations end up getting dropped. So I've been arrested a bunch of times. And most of the time they get dropped immediately, or after after a few months of going through the courts, they just drop them. It's not worth it to them for the most part. I mean, if you're doing something seriously intense on your own and kind of in an isolated situation, then you might go in for a while. But I wouldn't be too afraid of the jails and of the prison system. I know many people who have gone in and out of that. It is not as bad as the popular media portrays it. It's not as end of the world as you might think it would be. And there's a lot of good people in jail. Sorry. For real, there's a lot of good people in jail that are there because of racism, that are there because of all kinds of social stigma, that are there because of the war on the poor. People get thrown in jail for being poor, really. I mean, most people in jail are not violent criminals. Most people in jail are in jail for property-related crimes. Up here, and then I have someone down here. Yeah.
I agree, because I know people who've been in and out of jail, and it does have a toll on your employment positions and everything. But I feel like that is one of the biggest fields why people don't really protest or stuff, because in which since the police is policing, and there's so much money going into it, and there's so much resources that they can do to stop events from us speaking out, letting our voices to be heard. And if that comes and bite us in the butt, it was that we can't survive. That is a big, huge toll on us. And it's like, will you risk that to set a good example for your future?
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely a consideration. I'm not trying to say there's no impacts on you if you do get arrested or go to jail or whatever. There's all kinds of negatives. There's some positives, but there is impact for sure, And you have to think about it. You have to think about what risks you're taking when you take them. You have to think about how far you're willing to go, etc. So I had a hand here, and then I want to have a hand down here.
This is something going back to what you were talking about, baby boomers. I'm a baby boomer.
I know.
Okay. I was listening to everything he said, and there's some truth about some of the greed that's out there. I wouldn't consider it baby boomers. I'd consider it that was the structure that was in place, and that's how we got ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that there's a lot of the reason that there's the shrinking middle class, which I'm concerned about as well for my own kids. What I think a lot of it is redistribution of wealth in other countries and third world countries, because that's where the companies are going, that's where the jobs are going. So to paint the baby boomers as a bad guy, I think is kind of a little bit disrespectful. But I do believe that there was a structure that was built that way that everyone believed in, had believed in very many years. I'm not saying that the structure should stay that way, but to blame the baby boomers, I think is a little bit on the...
Okay, well, just in response to that, baby boomers are the ones running those companies that are moving overseas and creating, jobs.
No, actually, it's a lot of the younger generation and a lot of those third world nations that are running a lot of...
They're managing it for them. They're the local managers. I agree. But then there's also the fact that, this is fairly new. This neoliberal economics is not, centuries old. It's new. The privatization push is relatively new. There's a lot of dynamics at play that do kind of get traced back to the baby boomer generation and what they've done. I do believe in generational conflict. I don't think that it's fair to minimize that. I do feel that older generations have screwed most of us in this room, and I think that we should also organize as generations to name it, to call it out, and to fight back. I mean, I really want people to push back when folks start saying, "Oh, your generation's entitled or lazy," or when we get made fun of for whatever living with our parents, or all these other things. I think that it's important for us to put it back on these older generations who have set up the system in a way that has pretty much squeezed any opportunity out from under us.
Darius?
Yes. Oh, sorry, you also want to
Isn't it somewhat problematic to take two generations and dichotomously pit them against one another? Because if we're talking about positive social change, we need to bring together the 98% of the population who are being exploited. Mm-hmm. And to simply say that it's intergenerational conflict or one generation versus another, mm-hmm. I would argue that that's taking your eye off of the systemic level and painting a picture of one versus the other, mm-hmm. which is an activist and someone who's looking for social justice for all humanity, mm-hmm. we would want to move away from.
Well, I would agree. I mean, I would also, would like to respond to that in the sense that, when people of color organize to fight racism, to fight discrimination based on race, a lot of white people would agree that yes, that exists, and be in solidarity with them and support them in their struggles to tear apart these systems of privilege and oppression. Same way with sexism. There's men who try and be allies to women. But there is class struggle, there is gender struggle, there is racial tension, there is generational tensions, and I don't think it's useful for us to pretend like they don't exist. We are different. We are different generations. And sorry, I want to pass it on to, I think there's other people that want to speak too. So.
I kind of agree with Amanda on that. I think the systemic issues are more important than the generational ones. And I know that a lot of people in my generation screwed up. And I know I go to a lot of activist events, and I'm like, why are there three of us, mostly, I have to say in my experience in the Latin American community, why are there like 3 or 4 of us of my generation, and I'm so happy to see all the young people, but I do feel like most of my generation kind of sold out and betrayed the values they claimed to have in the 60s and 70s. But having said that, wasn't really the main point I wanted to make. The main point I wanted to address was the fear of prison. Mm-hmm. Guys, I'm in my late 50s, and I've been an activist since I was a teenager. I have never been arrested. I have been in lots and lots of situations where I could have been arrested, I might have been arrested. I'm really glad I've never been arrested. But don't let fear of being arrested stop you from doing important grassroots work. I've been involved in environmental movements, I've been involved in social justice movements, I've been involved in social forums before on a smaller scale than Darius. I've been involved in all kinds of movements. I really am quite aware that I probably have a huge CSIS file, and I would rather they didn't have that file on me, but I don't let that stop me because I have kids and I have grandkids, and I want there to be a decent, inhabitable world and a more just world for them to grow up in and to live in. So please, please don't let fear of being arrested keep you from being active.
Okay, so I see like 3 hands here, 1 hand here, and 1 hand there, but I'm going to start here because there's a lot of people here who haven't spoken yet, and I think it's important to value that. So.
And we really only have 5 minutes.
And we only have 5 minutes, so that might be the end. Yeah.
I just had a question. Do you think that it's also an issue of we've been told for years and years and years that life is unfair and we just need to learn to deal with it? So do you think that as an institutional society, that as youth being told that for years and years and years, we don't feel like we can do anything to rise up and make a difference?
There's definitely been a strategy of disempowering youth. If you look at all movements throughout history, they've been led by youth who generally have less to lose, who haven't already been disillusioned by being beaten down by the system, and who are willing to speak their mind and want to address issues in their world. So. The strategy has obviously been to burden us with debt. That's one way to keep us controlled, as well as they've created these systems of control, and the media, right? They've also really shifted our culture away from that through mass media. So that definitely against the interests of the people who want to continue business as usual, for the youth to wake up and start revolting and start pushing back and claiming power for their generation. So our generation, the youth is a wild card, right? The youth are the ones who are going to push for change. So they want to contain that as much as possible. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Another hand is here.
I just have so many points now. I would like to agree with Elizabeth too. She's a professor, but they have a biased opinion, but I agree. I was part of a youth panel 2 months ago, and it was this generation, the 2-generation thing. And I have to speak on behalf of the youth, and they're asking me all these questions, why I'm lazy, why I'm expecting all this stuff.
Of course they ask you that.
But then I kind of tossed it back to them, but I was like, you guys are the ones who don't really have hope in us, and I agree with Amanda completely. For me, I'm getting pissed off at the kids younger than me, but it just only makes sense that they are our future. If we're concerned about our future, we have to continue to empower each other a continuous way.
Oh, I agree. I have lots of allies that are baby boomers. I have lots of love for other baby boomers in my life. I just like to, I'd like youth to organize as a generation. 100%. And I think it's important for us to do that and recognize
Which leads to my other question, what would be another way, because I've never been to a protest before, but how would you get involved without, because things usually escalate. So I don't know how you would be able to get involved without it.
Without it escalating?
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah,
Because
I
I
mean,
believe in social change. I think that it should happen. Like I
Totally.
100%, but sometimes it just like I don't know what I can do really. So.
mhm. So yeah, it's time to fight back, and so there's a lot of places that we can fight back. There is our workplaces. We can organize. We can slow down what we do. We can slow down profits for our employers. We can walk out. We can strike. We can form unions. We can take over if we have enough power. If we do that, the problem is we always consider our jobs temporary, and so we're not invested in organizing in them. Then there's our neighborhoods. We can take space, create community gardens. We can defend each other from eviction. There's going to be a lot of evictions coming once this bubble bursts, this housing bubble in Canada, like it did in the States. So we can defend each other from evictions. We can form solidarity networks where we defend each other from rent increases, from unfair labor practices. I mean, there's all kinds of community things we can do in our neighborhoods. We can form neighborhood assemblies. We can organize our neighborhoods to be along lines of mutual aid. We can organize at school. We can organize by departments. We can shut it down as students and demand better, free, cheaper, whatever, what have you, education. We can organize in our environments. I mean, we all live in environments. Next time they're polluting the river that you live on, go and stop them. Go and stop the cutting of trees, the erosion of habitats. I mean, we live in environments. We can organize in our environments and fight back. We only need a few people to do it. You only really need a few people to like go out and start, and people will join you because people want to see people doing something before they jump in. So it's up to you to really start it. Actually, rather than join it, I'd rather reframe it as how do we start it. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing that up because it's really important for us to like learn that it's not just going to a protest. Going to a protest doesn't really do anything. We have to actually be organizing. We have to actually stop the things that we want to stop in the world, like physically stop them. And we have to create the things that we want to see in the world. We have to build those things. So there was another hand back there that's been waiting for a long time.
Sorry, my original comment actually is in direct response to that, is that I feel like our generation tends to be very passive in the sense that they fear to start. I feel like they tend to worry because our society tends to be very individualistic, that a lot of people are afraid to stand by themselves because they feel like there isn't the support there, that they don't want to put themselves forward and risk that because they feel like they might be by themselves. Obviously, we have the same concerns, but I'm saying I understand why it would be difficult to start. I feel like people need to realize that they're not alone. Really. I mean, but yes, it is difficult.
So yeah, I mean, I started the Social Justice Club on campus here at Fanshawe. I helped start a social center in London called Empowerment. I've started calls for demonstrations, actions, etc. It is tough to like get over that initial hurdle. I mean, for a long time I had these feelings. I had this like desire for a better world, and I didn't actually do anything. I'd go to a protest and be like, meh, like this isn't really like feel empowering, and I'd leave. But it's really, you're right. It's a big hurdle to actually take that step forward and make actions. But we can start in all kinds of ways in our communities and in our daily lives, right? So I thought there was one more hand here before I go back here because I've spoken a couple times. Yeah, up there, yeah.
I just want to agree with these things about how it's not all on baby boomers, but it's also not all on us. Like, as much as like, they might be making actions, people are making fine. Like I said, it goes both ways. So the point is that like I don't think we should be finger pointing anywhere, but like my question is how, if we were to start something as youth, how do we get older generations to take it seriously? Because as much as I think we like to think that we can all come together, like that's not going to happen. It's very hard to get adults to take things that we say seriously, and kids to understand what adults are saying. So like, how would you recommend that?
Make them take you seriously? Disrupt their lives. Really, that's the only way they'll take you seriously. That's how the students were taken seriously in Quebec. I mean, they were doing smaller things and demonstrations that didn't affect broader society, that only affected campus for a long time. And no one took them seriously. No one really took them seriously until they started affecting everyone's daily life. And really, that's what you have to do. If you want adults to take you seriously, you have to like bring it to them. You have to actually make it something you have to interact with. And you know, like I feel like a lot of people mistook what I was saying about boomers for being very anti-boomer. But I do want to reiterate that I agree that we all have to work together. I work with a lot of boomers on a lot of different campaigns, and to be honest, there's some of them that are the most solid people I know. So it's not just us, because we're also screwed up. Like we're all a bunch of messed up people too, doing all kinds of stupid things. But you know, I just do want, the title was called Generational Conflict. So there you have it.
Before everybody goes, I do have a couple of things I want to say, but before I do, and before any more of you leave, I want to ask you to join me in thanking Darius. I'm sure he's given us all a lot to think about. And on behalf of the Social Science Forum,
Thank you so much.
a couple of other things I wanted to mention. I forgot to mention that Darius is part of a hip-hop duo called Test Your Logic, and he has CDs here. He also has pamphlets on the social forum that's going to take place in Ottawa. Very simple pamphlets, just information on this side and the details here. They're free. Anybody is welcome to come and get one. He also has a few other items for sale, books and so on, if anybody is interested in coming and taking a look. Couple of other ways in London you can get involved. There is going to be a film festival on water, right, or community at Museum London, April 4th, 5th, and 6th. We've got some amazing films, and there's a possibility to network with others to begin to become involved if water and the environment is an important issue to you. And in preparation, leading up to the social forum that Darius is working on, is going to be a regional social forum in London, probably the weekend of July 11th.
I'm the sustainability coordinator over in Sea Building.
So please mark your calendars or email me
I just want to get Lorraine to announce it.
and get involved in your local community. And thank you again, Darius.
Thanks so much. I have some books and CDs here if anyone's interested, and I'm also available to talk more informally with people if people want.
Amanda is about to show a movie called Chasing Ice, which is about climate change in this room. If
Great.
anybody wants to stay.
Is it part of the class? No? Oh, cool.
Lorraine, I have students.
Has everyone got one?
See you in
It is working in a lot of different ways. The context we do. Sorry,
I'm not on there.
Okay, so is
at the bookstore on what's that bookstore called? One on City Lights. Yeah, they have it there.
okay, let's go.
Asking for 12 is Everyone's like, hey, what are you doing on anti-boomer? The boomers are anti-us, man. Shoot. I could also. I probably would shoot, but I could give you probably my hand. Yeah? Okay, cool. Thanks.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, amazing. Awesome. I think I went okay though. Yeah.
It was too bad people got hung up on that.
Hey, you hurt my feelings. It's generational conflict.
I like more what Amanda said, that we have to focus on systemic.
Oh, these are the things.
Leave me with some of those. I mean, I know you have copies. I know they had a lot of trouble.
With the what? Camera?
I don't know how much.
Field trip? Yeah.
When was that?
outside of class.
Yeah, I was watching you thinking, wow, you're really in the zone because you're not even aware of the stuff that's happening right this second.
Okay.
Maybe a little more than that.